All right,
Hey.
thank you.
Thank
you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you to the studio audience for coming out here and Art This episode number 18.
That's right. Welcome, Colonel Middleton.
I broke out the tie.
You're looking good.
Thank you. I try.
This is the show where we try to figure out the work that makes art work. And we've got an action-packed program this week. We've got 2 features from the field and an in-studio guest, author Tom Williams. It's going to be great.
It is going to be
Lead us
great.
off with your first feature, Steve.
Well, as you all know, in the past few weeks on our program, done Commonwealth Curiosities Volume 2. Various places, 10 different places throughout the state of Kentucky. Interesting, odd, and quirky. Our feature this week is on the town of Rabbit Hash, Kentucky. And this is the town that I first heard about because they have a dog for a mayor. No joke, dog for a mayor. The artwork, as we try to feature here, is the art of the town and the pacing of the town itself. And all the barking over politics in the last couple days here, it's a good idea to see how the hound was really running this town.
That's right.
Yeah. So Rabbit Hash, Kentucky, from Commonwealth Curiosities Volume 2.
Well, it's the center of the universe. That's all I can tell you. I think Rabbit Hash is the culmination of, let's say, a feeling. It's, Rabbit Hash is not, it's kind of a feeling of that place you want to be, that place you want to sit alone in it for 5 minutes, forget everything that's going on. It's kind of therapy. It's like, you got aromatherapy, and I think this river must give off some kind of, they used to call it miasma back in the old days, but the miasma the river gave off was like mosquitoes and fog. But it's just something peaceful. It's something that actually gets into your soul and lets you calm down. Hi, my name is Don Clare, and I'm the president of the Rabbit Hash Historical Society. And the Rabbit Hash Historical Society owns the small town of Rabbit Hash, Kentucky. Rabbit Hash is it's about 2.5 acre spot right on the edge of the Ohio River in western Boone County, Kentucky. It's across from Rising Sun, Indiana. The whole town is centered around the Rabbit Hash General Store. It's been in operation since 1831. Now, it started out as, it was built by a local Grange organization. That was an agricultural social group of farmers, and what they did was they built that building there as a repository for their crops. So they'd bring their crops down here, store it in there until a steamboat came up or down the river. Then they would load it onto the boat. And then if the steamboats were bringing anything to this area, it would be offloaded and stored there. So it was like a co-op building. And eventually, there was one fellow that kind of minded it. He eventually took over the whole building and turned it into a general store. So ever since 1831, this has been the pulse of this community. What we did, we decided that we were going to have a honorary mayor election. And what that encompassed was, whoever wanted to be mayor of Rabbit Hash for a day, you put in $1, and that's one vote. So that kind of took off. People were, putting $5, $10, putting their name in. And then one fella decided, I think my dog needs to be mayor. So he got on this campaign, and sure enough, he raised so much money that the humans all dropped out because they couldn't afford it, and other dogs had entered the race. And finally, when it was all over, the town made about $9,000, and we got our first dog mayor. That kind of made national news, town has a mayor. It was really international news. I had a call from a magazine in Germany, and the guy that was writing the article, I could hardly understand him. He had a very heavy accent. He's trying to interview me, and he's saying, "Well, how can you have a dog for mayor? What does your president think?" I said, "Well, the president has nothing to do with it. It's our town. We decided to," and he just could not get that concept that we elected a dog. Like, how does he make decisions? And so I don't know what happened to his story. I never saw it. But so eventually Goofy succumbed to old age, and so we had another mayor contest. And this happened to coincide with the first Obama election, same year. And the same thing happened. We $1 a vote, vote as much as you want. Instead of not allowing any liquor near the polls, we encouraged liquor near the polls. Have a shot of whiskey and vote for our candidate. So that again raised about $10,000. And since it was in the election year, we were on the Jimmy Kimmel show with the candidates. Bob Schieffer from the Sunday morning, political analyst got in and said something about our election. It just took off. I mean, it was great publicity, and it was a great way to raise money for the town. So, I mean, she does what she wants. I think she is considering, now this has not been put out in public. You're going to break this story. This is something. But she's getting tired. She's so fed up with these clowns that are declaring to run for presidency. I mean, that she's actually thinking of running for president of the United States this year in 2016. Lucy Liu for president. You can leave Cincinnati and 20 minutes later be right here. Your blood pressure drops like 20 points. You can you can sit and relax and feel no stress, and it's just a 20-minute ride from that that society stuff and all the pressures. And it's right here in our tri-state. I usually to find a place with this kind of serenity and peaceful environment, you'd have to drive 4 or 5 hours to get somewhere with this kind of feeling. So it's definitely a tourist destination. Now I just would like invite everybody to come see our little piece of the center of the universe and enjoy the place. And as far as we're determined, we're going to keep it here for generations to come. So.
Thank you so much. We're back on Artist, the show about the work that makes art work. And we're thrilled to have author Tom Williams with us today. He has over 50 publications in such periodicals as Boulevard, Connecticut Review, and the Indiana Review. While most of us get into trouble for lying, Tom has been rewarded with fellowships for his fiction from the Wisconsin Arts Board and the Arkansas Arts Council. Author of the novella The Mimic's Own Voice, the novel Don't Start Me Talkin', and our focus today, his new collection of short stories, Among the Wild Mulattoes. Tom leads a double life as chair of the Department of English here at Morehead State University. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a nice warm welcome to author Tom Williams. Thank you.
John.
Thank you for coming on.
All right.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
All right. I have loved reading your book. And I'll tell you.
Every author loves to hear.
Oh, yes. Well, when I hear that I have to interview an author, I think, oh no, I'm going to have to pretend to like another book. But I have not had any of that crisis with your work. It's been a hoot, and I've really enjoyed it very much. And so I've got a bazillion questions, but I would like to start with a question that you would like to be asked. That is, when you finished and you knew you were going to be doing interviews, was there something that you suspected or predicted or hoped that people would ask you about this book?
That's a good question, because it's one that has has a long lifespan of existence as a manuscript before it became a book and it was in covers. And I think that probably what I thought about the most with it was something along the lines of, is there some kind of connective tissue between all these stories, or are they just, things that you had lying around and slapped together? And the truth is that though they're written over a long period of time, they do have a theme of doubleness and things of feeling in between. My publisher and I came up with the phrase, all sorts of in-betweens, to describe some of the characters who exist in these pages.
If you wouldn't mind, if I could say the title of the story,
Right.
and you give us the Netflix blurb
Yes.
for that story.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And the
absolutely.
first story, which I could talk to you about for an hour because it is a scream, the story of my novel, three-piece combo with drink. What happens?
Frustrated novelist encounters epiphany in a fried chicken franchise, decides to write a novel about his three-piece combo and drink, and much to his surprise finds support from that corporation, but things are not as they seem.
Yes. Wealth does not mean success, right?
Exactly,
Okay, and
exactly.
that story sets up this book in a way that looks like the perfect well-made play, and I don't know if it's just a happy accident or not, but my congrats on that.
Well, thank you.
The strangest story in the book, the second person narration, a public service.
Public
What's
service.
that all about?
So for tender viewers, they might want to walk away from the screen right now.
Yeah.
CEO of a website devoted to upskirt videos of big, beautiful women is trying to encourage one of his charges to go back in the field to continue this valuable public service that he.
It's kind of like Lincoln's second inaugural, but just a little different.
That was on my mind. I have to say that, John. Something I really wanted to incorporate in my work.
That story made me feel dirty.
Well, it should.
I had to go hose off.
Yeah.
The next one, movie star entrance.
Movie star
This is
entrance.
where this book takes off.
A biracial character decides that through a happenstance of finding something in a kind of alt weekly newspaper about how he can sort of dress himself up, he has a feeling of being sort of like he's just kind of ordinary, and that's like the worst thing possible. And he visits a couple who work on just that, the movie star entrance. I think it's one of my favorite kind of parasecondary characters I've ever written about, Ramon and Miriam. And they talk about, James Dean in Giant, Orson Welles in The Third Man, the movie star entrance, and they try to give that to their clients. They give that to him, but what they don't give him is the follow-up, what happens in the middle third of the movie, but they might have something else for him in store. Yeah.
And we can't say more without
Yeah.
wrecking it. All right, so
Spoiler
you're going to
alert.
have to read it.
Yeah.
Who among us knows the route to heaven?
Yeah. I'll say this. Imagine Cain, as in Cain and Abel, gets to tell his story many years later, but it's not so much a biblical story as the kind of biblical cadences and potency that you
Yes.
find in such tales.
Yes, and we will hear from that
Yes,
one today
that's
from
one
you.
we'll
Very
hear.
good, very good. This story, and I think even if a person is not a Joseph Conrad
Yeah.
lover, that the Hotel Joseph Conrad is still quite alluring. Tell us a
Right.
little bit about this. Is the most Twilight Zone-ish of the
Yeah,
stories.
I think that's a good sort of characterization of it. Again, fairly successful writer, not as frustrated as a writer as the gentleman in the first story, gets an enigmatic invitation to pursue something called the Hotel Joseph Conrad, and is able to get closer and closer and closer. He even cites this Zeno's paradox, that every time we get closer to something, we're actually that much farther away. And The question is, will he reach it? Will he reach this, and what will it be when he finds it?
Yes, and we won't give away the
That's
ending.
right.
The most famous man in these United States, Sarcasm City. What happens here?
This is the only person left in the United States who has not been on a reality show, and he is pursued by many to participate in one.
Closest to terror in the entire book, but the most delicious, sarcastic terror, too, and that's ethnic studies.
Ethnic studies, yep. Black actor is unwittingly brought before a class of, two classes actually, an ethnic studies class and a life drawing class. He and has a Latino and an Asian American and a Native American, and what they think is going to be a Q&A with the students about their various experiences turns into something quite different.
The lessons of a face.
Yes, classic doppelganger story, only what if your doppelganger doesn't look like you or have anything in common with you, and yet nobody notices when he takes your place?
Yes, another
What do you do?
wonderful examination of the in-between.
Yeah.
That runs like a
Yeah.
really, it's not a thread, it's a
No.
rope that runs
Yeah.
through this book. And then
club,
the
a
delicious
cudgel.
story. The delicious story that tricked me completely because I wanted to love the wild mulattoes.
Oh.
The last story, Among the Wild Mulattoes.
All right. This is very kind of Conradian almost. It is kind of like, it's a lot like Heart of Darkness or something like that. But a long herd of band of wild people of color is discovered by an anthropologist who finds first that this is who himself is biracial, who finds first comfort and welcome there, but not for long. So
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, we are thrilled that you're here and that you will read from your book for us.
very nice.
And I really appreciate that. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, author Tom Williams. All right.
Okay, so I'm going to read a story from Among the Wild Mulattoes, which, as should be said, is available at many fine bookstores, Coffee Tree Books among them, and also online. I'm going to read a story, and one of the reasons why I wanted to pick this one, because I'd lately been talking to a lot of my students about, the importance of detail, the importance of things that surround characters in as much as the things that they do and they say. And I think this is a particularly apt one. It's sort of trying to really be a pretty short story and not have a particularly complicated plot, but I like to think it's advanced by just the kind of sense of what we learn about each one of these people in it. This is called Who Among Us Knows the Route to Heaven? A better world awaits me, so I once believed. But as of today, the afternoon's event still fresh and impelling me to write. Mine is a name to be added just below Cain's on that long list of disgruntled brothers. For though my kinship with our first fugitive is recent, and I never once from his birth to the present wished my brother ill or was indifferent to his life, today I know that his was the offering accepted. Once it seemed he was the only friend I had. Yes, there are parents, but as the children of a black father and white mother, biracial, I believe, is the word. We were, at his birth in 1971 in suburban central Ohio, a rarity. Odder than two-headed calves, stranger than Uri Geller, who could bend spoons with his mind. At that time, I was 4 years ahead of my brother in American life and thought it my duty to be more than merely a sibling, a figure to query about trading cards, tadpoles, and the fairer sex. I had to be a role model as well as a sentinel as vigilant as any sword-bearing angel. For I had already determined that someone like me was always treading a narrow and treacherous path, not unlike the tightrope stretched out over Niagara Falls with jagged rocks to one side, angry, churning water to the other. White children admired me when I broke the tape well ahead of them in the 50-yard dash or leapt over them for rebounds at the schoolyard courts. Yet, when I brought to lunch fried chicken or napped in history, they chuckled quietly and nodded at each other in affirmation that their parents and the TV were right about black folk. Black children touched their hands to my wavy, undoubtedly good hair and envied my light eyes and skin. But if I professed an admiration, say, for the music of Supertramp, or did not return immediately the affection of a black girl my age, they aimed at me the barbs their parents had taught them, Tom and traitor. My parents, bless them, were no more experienced or wiser about these matters than I. They told me to think of myself as an individual and nothing more. I could be anyone and anything I wanted. Heard then and now, this soothing litany did nothing but confuse me. And until my brother's birth, I was on my own to navigate that slim and wavering wire. Dare I say my decision to aid my brother was correct? I told him all my woes as soon as he progressed from the contented coos of a babe yet to wander far from home to the hesitant words of a confused kindergartner. And initially he seemed a willing listener. His forays into the world brought him back with experiences similar, but not quite to mine. Where I was wrong was in assuming that he'd be behind me on the wire. But because I'd survived those obstacles and blazed a path, if you will, his was a broader and simpler thoroughfare to travel. This cheered me, for I then believed our paths would keep us close together, and our reward was but a few paces ahead. Had our lives remained static, I believe we would be in good stead today, still the best of friends and calling each other on the phone or visiting to compare and praise our respective blessings. But an incident occurred, one that may seem nondescript and unthreatening, but is, I assure you, the single cause for our, or is it my, present condition. The incident I write of is our parents' unexpected leap into technology. In our home, television's presence had been virtually unnoticeable. My parents kept in their bedroom a 12-inch black and white Emerson that hummed and glowed and spat out its corruption only when either mother or father deemed a program worthy of the entire family's attention. The four of us assembled on the bed, we watched events of import. In 1974, Mr. Nixon's resignation. The Cincinnati Reds World Series victory in 1975. I admit I enjoyed these moments, the family huddled together as if for warmth. Viewing these events, the U.S. seemed to promise as evidence of a better place for its citizens. But even as a youth, I knew the commercials were abrasive, the situation comedies mere spectacles of vice, the dramas void of any conflict that mattered. Never once did I see a face or family that looked like mine. But then, on the evening after President Reagan's re-election in 1984, a period we might recall as mourning in America, not only were we the new owners of a 24-inch color Magnavox, but too a VCR, along with the coaxial cables to enshrine us as the first family on our block with HBO. From that moment, my stewardship was rocked. Early on, viewing increased in the new location, the family room. Our parents, with 31 channels at their disposal, claimed there were now ample opportunities for young boys to look upon events historical, educational, and affirmative. My brother was 13 then, a perfect age, it seems to me now, to be seduced from the path. Soon the sound of the set became steady. Daily I watched him kneel 3 feet away from the screen. Yet it was not simply his vigilance there that troubled me. His behavior became impossible to predict. He puffed and painted himself into every leading man, game show host, and compensated endorser he viewed. His voice changed, not through puberty's whims as mine had, but in mimicry of those hawking detergent, aftershave, and worldviews. It's a beautiful day, I told him one summer afternoon, the bizarre antics of Lucille Ball reflected in his eyes. We should get out and enjoy it. Gilligan is on in a few minutes, he said, moving close enough to the screen to leave behind a greasy forehead print. Why do you get so close like that? His response came by way of the volume button. Ms. Ball's whine soon eerily transformed into something like the wails of the damned. He needed, I felt, a brother's advice. They're not real, I said. Who? Those TV people. They're robots, mannequins, not real like mother and father and me. Exactly, he said. I could tolerate no more. I wedged myself between him and the screen, then thrust my knees rudely into his face. He pitched over backwards, then regarded me not with the rage I expected, but with a grin like that of the demon summoned by Dr. Faustus. What are you going to do? He said. "Turn it off," I said. "Now." It didn't stay off. And before it always sat my brother. For a time he sported a handlebar mustache. Later, in a pair of mother's heels, he read aloud from L. Ron Hubbard's Dianetics. Some days he appeared corpulent, others Republican. In our bunk beds at night, he spoke with equal facility of bank robberies and the Loch Ness Monster. Yet these guises, shapes, and voices evaporated when our parents were home. To them, he hadn't changed a jot. His grades were still high. Friends from school visited often. At 13, he claimed he wanted to go to Cornell, major in hotel restaurant management. Yet I knew this behavior to be illusory and saw my guardianship as the last fortification against the flood. It had to be stepped up, sharpened. I buried the remote deep in the cat box and shredded like cabbage for slaw his TV guides, hoping if the instruments of what seemed like worship were no longer within reach, his return, the real him, would be imminent. I left books from my and our parents' shelves in clear sight, biographies of Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, novels by Baldwin, father's favorite writer, and the poetry of Nikki Giovanni, whose mother our mother once worked with. From the closet I retrieved the basketballs and baseball gloves, football cleats and ice skates, the board games, ham radios, jigsaw puzzles. Each I found where I left it. Nothing could keep him from the set, bathing his ears in the balms of "Come on down, where's the beef?" and "No new taxes." Thus, when I turned 18 and decided to begin my adulthood away from home, my guardianship, so long ignored and neglected, ceased. Who was I to think I could change him when he shined his jackboots, spoke in tongues, or masturbated fiercely? It was all I could do to walk out the door while he took his eyes away from the transvestites on Phil Donahue to reveal the still beating heart of a dove rolling over the points of his sharpened canines. My chief emotion when I thought of my brother had been regret. He was undeniably lost. When the scales fell from mother and father's eyes and they finally noticed this transformation, his would be a story of much sadness. 10 years I waited for some word of him. Those same 10 years I thought it best to never hear word of him. Were that to occur, it meant for me visions of wreckage and ruination, stations I never once wished for him. As a result, I became more or less orphaned, without a sibling, wandering alone on the path I thought virtuous, only to find myself as far from a better world as I once thought my brother. In Houston, Texas, I landed, whose skies are lit by distant fires, chemical plants, they say, but I know otherwise, where I am presently engaged in road repair for the county. I often wonder whether it was the falls or the rocks that I plunged toward, but to mull over that dilemma, tracing each step that was sure and each one that failed, is as torturous as the actual trek. So it should not have surprised me this afternoon when I, with a duffel bag of filthy work shirts and jeans, ventured to the Fairview washateria and saw on the other side of the Emerson anchored to the ceiling my very own brother. Though most viewers registered his handsome looks, heard in his resonant voice deliver an informed, even clever report of a Tornado's touchdown outside Channelview, I heard the message he had strictly for me. Peering through that crowd of citizens with dirty socks and quarters, he spotted me with eyes that were not his own and told me in a voice as borrowed as the suit he wore that his election is secure, that he pities my lowly estate. And at that moment, I knew he would live forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Fantastic, Tom Williams. And I have to ask you before you go, would you sign my book?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
This is to your cousin?
Oh, that would be to me, yeah.
Okay.
To John, the greatest TV host of all time. Something, something modest like that. Hey, Tom Williams, thank you. We'll be right back with more Art This.
All right, welcome back. And once again, special thanks to Tom Williams. And you can buy that book various places, but highly recommend here in our town at Coffee Tree Books. And thanks, Tom, once again for coming on. But right now, I am with Convergent Media student Patrick Broomback and editor, multimedia editor of The Trailblazer. And he has produced a package for an ongoing series for the Trailblazer called Heartbeat, dealing with the traditional music band Mountain Sound. Talk a little bit about what you got for us here today, Patrick.
Well, Mountain Sound consists of Andrew Preston and Austin Haddix. They're part of the KC team down here. Andrew wrote the song. He's got a pretty impressive beard. You might like that, Middleton.
Oh, yeah. You know it.
Yeah. He wrote the song, and he won. He submitted it to a songwriting contest down in North Carolina, and he came in first place, and he beat like Grammy Award winners. And side note, Steve Martin was there, because Steve Martin's an amazing banjo player. But they went down to North Carolina, and 10 groups got to play and perform, and he was one of them.
That was at the the International Bluegrass Music Awards.
Yeah.
So IBMA, it's a pretty big deal. And this is part of the Heartbeat series produced by the Trailblazer originally. But folks, let's take a look at the Mountain Sound.
As deep as the river runs, he told me, sir, I've lost my gun, I've lost my home, and my stores are none. I'm a wayfarer with the waning sun. Well, I said, friend, please come this way to the camp where my daughters wait. We've come to trawl at the river's base. We're wanderers to this day. He came with me in the shade of night, a pair of mossy eyes and a moonlit pines, a lion's mane and a tender smile. I got the wild of the mountain in you, child. My youngest ne'er did leave his side. My eldest grew to be his pride. For a vacancy he did subside. We met beneath the winter tide. Oh, on our 15th winter year. He said to me, my darling dear, we must retire and leave me here. For a dreadful wind is approaching near. Our children too soon had aged when we plucked a hazel bloom bouquet, knelt at ease near a quiet grave, wherein my finest memories lay. Oh, I know when I grow old, I'll grow like hazel in the cold wet snow. There I met a lonesome soul, and I still melt when the cold wind blows.
Well, here it is, the end of the season,
right.
Stephen.
We've had a heck of a season.
We sure have.
A man escaping from a straitjacket,
That's right.
rock and roll band, and a reading by Tom Williams.
And Tom Williams, fantastic. Thanks again to Tom for coming
Yeah.
and this wonderful audience. We're going to get out of here.
Ready?
All right, let's do it. 1, 2, 3.